Okay. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be with you to talk about this topic that for me is quite interesting, quite deep. I should say that 1 year ago, a little more, I have crossed the ocean. I came to Africa to learn from the peoples. Tell me how to do that. This one. Perfect. Okay, so now I think that I have the control of everything. Yeah. So, and in the waves of Africa, I discovered more things that I expected. As I told you, I crossed the ocean to discover many things. I remember that when I arrived, some scholars told me that probably you should learn more about Ubuntu, because I'm working in a project of natural law since 2001, a while, a time ago. I began to write a code, a summary of natural law. I want to finish that here in Africa. So my great question was, is that the same or not? We are talking both about dignity, about society, natural law and Ubuntu, humanity. Is that the same or not? That was the question that I asked to myself. And today I will try to solve with numbers, because it's so easy to say, no, for sure it's the same, or it's not at all, it's different, you don't understand me. So I tried to put numbers to this. This is the main idea, no, of Ubuntu. I am because we are. There are many ways of explaining the thing, no? This is in Bantu. I will say that in Bantu, there are many languages, 400 languages, all over the south of Africa, more or less, and the east of Africa, mainly. It began 2,000 years ago, 400,000 years ago, here, the Bantu language, and was spread all over Africa, first going to the south, and then from the middle to many other parts, as you know. Now is the most important peoples of Africa. Almost 400 million people are speaking Bantu that more or less share the same idea, as we will see. Because this idea of Ubuntu in many languages of Bantu language are expressed in different ways, as you can see. In Soto, a person is a person through other person. In Zulu, a person is a person through other people. In Xhosa, a person is a person through other people. And in Shona, well, a person through other people. But more or less it's the same idea. It's a very simple principle, I will say, but so deep. And to understand this, I think that we have to see also the peoples, the way of living of the people, of African people, to understand this. Because it's not just a phrase, it's a way of living, it's a way of understanding things. I think that is very deep, even deeper, for example, than Thomas Hobbes or John Locke. The idea of society that they have is a pact, an agreement of the will. And don't you see, all the fruit of the will. Or Jacques Rousseau said the same. This is deeper. This is I am, and they associate the am with the person, because this is a causality, it's a cause, yeah, because you are. There's a strong connection in the being. Yeah, that is so deep, I will say, is deeper, the idea, than the idea of society even, of some cultures from Aristotle. It's not against. I think that is a development. So, and that's why I wanted to be deeper in this. To put numbers to realize what they are talking about, I did a research here in the most repeated words of the 54 legal articles about Ubuntu. I found more or less almost 2,000 articles that mention Ubuntu, but only 54 that mention Ubuntu in the title. And I did a word cloud, which is the most repeated word with more occurrences, Africa, then Ubuntu in these papers here. So let's take a look on that. You have here one of the logos of the Congress, and that is the meaning. In these papers, the most repeated words, the 100 most repeated words are these ones. I did exactly the same with natural law. In this case, it was a little different. There were almost 80,000 papers written about natural law with the words natural law. But in the title, just 1,400 papers about with the title natural law. So I decided, let's choose the most influential papers with more situation, and I got the 100 papers with most of the situations there, and I did a study of occurrence words. These are the most repeated words in natural law papers, the most influential. No? You can see that this is different. No? Here, the most important thing is not Africa, obviously, because this is law. Right, natural law, obviously, but you can see what they are thinking when they are writing this kind of paper. So where is the discussion centered? That is the idea with this study. And I did, after these two lists, a comparison between both the papers of Ubuntu and the papers of natural law. And the conclusions were amazing. I was surprised with the conclusion. I never expect the thing that I will mention today. So let's begin with the coincidence, the things that are the same here and here. For example, the normative argumentation. You can see that law appears in both sides, more or less the same size, the same numbers of citations. They are talking about, well, it seems to be a clear answer. But constitution, in both sides, they are using the constitutional approach to talk about Ubuntu. This is Ubuntu papers, legal papers, and this is natural law, legal natural law, I will say. Then, legal, the idea of legal, you have here both laws and also, well, state, contract, many things related. The case law approach is important in both of them. You can see both talk about the courts and this. Then this is very interesting, the rational and moral argumentation. Both talks about principles, theory, justice. Here is justice. Let me see. Yeah, here is justice, as you can see. So we are talking about the same things. This is important to stress out because there is an author today, an African philosopher, legal philosopher, Cross, that says, no, Ubuntu is more close to positivism. And I will say, no, it's more close to natural law. Both are talking about, you can see ethics and morality here. And also here in natural law papers, morality is so big, and also ethics is there. So I don't agree with this author that says it's more close to positivism. No, it's absolutely the contrary. You know? It's based on humanity to get some conclusions for the law. Let's see another coincidence, the cultural concern. I was amazed because also in the natural law approach, you have a lot of concerns about tradition. I will say that is more or less the same. Then, the human foundation, we have in both humanity, Ubuntu, the root of the word is in both places, and also the idea of society. Here is quite interesting. You have community here, very small. I don't know if you can see here at the end, community. Instead of that, community is so big. Could be the same word, but the idea of community is so different. We will talk a little more about that later. And finally, the rights approach. Both sides are talking about nowadays with the language of human rights. It's a phrase of John Finnis, by the way. You have here also freedoms, rights, liberty, and many other things. The results, this for me was the most interesting thing. Exact coincidence of words, 64% of the words. Some similar notions, you will see, are the same, and just less than the third part, 27% things that are different. So we are talking about the same things, probably focusing our attention in a different thing. The level of confidence is almost all, more than 2/3. And let's put now, just to, there are some words, policy, politics, for example, also freedoms, they will use the another liberties, but we are talking more or less the same, no? This is also faith, the other side will say belief, religion, but it's more or less the same. And legislative, Congress, I will say these are the same words at the end of the day, are related. This is the 9% that I will say that they are talking about the same things. You have the words there. Now, let's focus in what is the difference. These 27% of words that are different, that are very, very interesting to realize. Obviously, the authors. The most cited author for natural lawyers is still today Aquinas. And you can see that this is very big, the name here, Aquinas. This, after Aquinas is John Finnis. John Finnis, that is still alive. It's interesting to know also. But by far Aquinas. Then we have also many others. Well, Dorkin is there. It's not properly a natural lawyer. Lon Fuller, and also is Wilson, one of the founding fathers of the United States, who wrote the Declaration of Independence and has an incredible theory of natural law. And in Africa, who is the most cited author? Meltz, Thaddeus Meltz. He was planning to come, but at the end of the day, he was not able to make it. And after that, Yvonne McGorrow is the second most cited author in these papers of Ubuntu, legal Ubuntu here in Africa. So that is clear. But let's go about to see not the authors, but in natural law, but they focus their attentions first in the relations between power and authority. They will talk about positivism to identify themselves, obviously, no? But then power, you can see government, so sovereign, authority, self-defense, and force. These are unique words that only appears in the natural law papers, not in Ubuntu. You can see that there are different approaches, no? Economic approach, I was surprised, no? They will talk a lot about property and copyright, about economic also, economics and many other things. And finally, that is interesting, the approach of the interest, the purpose, the aim, the intention. This is typical for natural lawyers. And I think that is quite interesting to realize. Well, our goals or ultimate end and many other things are present in natural law and less in Ubuntu papers. So now let's see what is typical from Africa, from Ubuntu philosophers in these 54 articles that had the Ubuntu word in the title. First, is absolutely clear that they want to stress out, to highlight the identity. Africa, obviously, Ubuntu, South, culture also. And there are two words that appear incredible. Roman, they mentioned that, as well as Western, obviously, to distinguish themselves from Ubuntu, so from other philosophies, approaches, to say, well, we are different, no? We are different. Yeah, this is so clear. The second idea that is quite interesting is the communitarian approach. You can see the same word community was also in the natural law papers, but was so small. And many other words you will realize that are here: groups, members, society, social. Some of them are also in the papers of natural law, but less repeated. Here, they will talk continuously about these kind of things. Hello. It seems to be that this is working. Yes, no? Well, okay. Now it's okay, this one. Thank you. So finally, well, I was impressed because when I talked, I read so many articles about natural law from European literature. They talk about dignity, but the word dignity didn't appear in English so many times, at least. And in Ubuntu papers, they will talk about dignity a lot. I mean, another harmony, well, the approach, the communitarian approach, and harmony. Harmonized relationship. This is working. Okay. So finally, the restorative approach. You can see here many papers saying we have to restore to reconciliation. The transformative approach is also here. It is quite interesting because there is an effort to get back to the good things that we had in the past here in Africa. They will see, the culture to rescue our traditions, it is so present here. And also the criminal approach, no? It's very common to see that, well, these some authors, they will realize we are victims or the victims are offenders. However, it is clear that not for everyone. You can see that in the constitution of South Africa, there is a very strong difference. At the epilogue in the Constitution of 1993, you can read, there is a need for understanding, but not for vengeance. A need for reparation, but not for retaliation. A need for Ubuntu, but not for victimization. So it's a thing that is very present all over Africa, I will say, but mainly in the papers of Ubuntu. Then there are other local topics, for example, development, children, equality also, life, capacity, health, and land. They will not talk about property in general, not copyright, but land. Is more specific of Africa and especially of Ubuntu papers. So what is the conclusion here? If we compare these two things, we realize that it's amazing. Most of the things that we have seen are identical. They are talking about the same things with the same kind of argumentation. The same foundation on morality is quite connected in both papers. The same idea of principle theories, the argument, the values, the goods, is mostly the 73% are exactly the same, I will say. And I also read many of these papers, and I will say, what kind of conclusions we can have? That we share more things that we can imagine, probably. Our specificities or peculiarities are not opposition, are not contradiction. There is not a contradiction between natural law and Ubuntu, I would say, philosophy. On the contrary, there is a lot of coincidence. And we should, and we can, and should learn from each other. I think that natural lawyers should learn this idea, deeper idea of community, that is not just society, it's not an agreement like Locke, Hobbes, and Rousseau said. No, it's not an agreement, it's something deeper, or community. At the same time, I think that African philosophers can learn something about the philosophy of natural law, yeah, developed by many people. One last idea, I think that after checking all of these kind of things, reading so many papers, I realized that Ubuntu philosophers are developing mainly now the philosophy of Ubuntu and the philosophy of Africa, more than in the past, I will say. In the last years, you have a great development with very original and great ideas, how to harmonize many things. You should do that. You should do that. This generation, I will say. And it's good to do that in a dialogue with other people. This is the idea. It's good to do that in a dialogue, because that is the most important thing. Not to create something in opposition of someone, against someone, but to build our knowledge, taking the good things that we have of each other. So the conclusion is that this dialogue is a mutual benefit relationship between natural law and Ubuntu philosophy. And with that, I will finish. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. I would like to know if there are any questions.
Maybe 4 running themes. So how did you develop or discover those themes? What methodology that you found running through those 54 articles? I was just curious how you did it. Was it textual analysis? Was it just to know the methodology? Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. I will say, well, yeah, I collect all the papers in the natural law 100 papers, and I did put all of a big data research, all of the words to count the repetitions of each word. And the biggest one are with more repetition, and the smallest one with less. So these are the 100 words with more occurrence in both cases. And that's why with that we know that what they are talking about in each side. Because these topics in each side. Okay. Well, it's just I realized that many things were connected: copyright, property, so you can connect, are more or less the same thing. Or community, members, group, this kind of thing are also connected. I realized that were the topics. Yeah, it was my approach. Thank you for the question in the case. I think that, okay. I think this.
Another question here.
Yes.
Okay, you've mentioned that a key part of Ubuntu is identity. Do you think that as Africans, we have a singular identity, given that colonialism is a key part of our identity because it interfered with our memory of who we are, and memories make a person. And we also have a Western aspect because most of the media we consume is Western, even an Oriental aspect, like from the Middle East. There's a lot of influence in our culture now. And so do you think that we have an identity as Africans, or do we have an identity crisis? And how does that affect Ubuntu, which is a key, which identity is a key part of?
Yeah. Well, I think that, of course, you have a special identity, stronger than in many other places. In South America, I'm from South America, we have also an identity. We were conquered by the Spaniards. I'm from Ecuador. It unifies ourselves. But we were conquered 3 centuries. Here it was not by that. But you have a stronger identity as a unity. And you realize, obviously, you have also an identity in many small countries and everywhere in the world nowadays. It's not just an African issue. They are suffering a kind of crisis of identity because we are opening our borders. We are globalizing ourselves. Every country in the world, we're changing our lives, the whole humanity, I will say. So, but I think that it's good to maintain the good things that we have and to improve the things that we can see that we can improve. No?
Another question online. I've just been informed that there's a question. Hold on, may we get the question?
By the way, I think that is a good idea. If there are many questions, you can also email me without any problem. Or we can talk later about many things, as well as with any speaker.
Good afternoon, sir. The question online asks, would the emphasis on identity, is this related to a postmodern way of looking at the world that emphasizes lived experience as a way of reaching knowledge? Is lived experience in contrast with rational articulation?
Well, I will say it's not precisely contrary of rational, and you can see in the words of Ubuntu in the papers that they emphasize the same thing: the theory, the argument, the value, the abstract, the aim. There are many things that are equal. They are using rational arguments in both cases. Ubuntu philosophy is not irrational. Yeah, I love this because it's so deep. So deep. Okay. Okay.
I think, is there any other question online? Okay.
Thank you in any case for the question, very good ones.
Yes, and also thank you, Prof, for your presentation. Maybe please give him a hand for that wonderful presentation. I'd like to hand over the floor to the next speaker.